different genres of pornography are also recommended to pupils. So again, my question very soon.
You've got to watch this to believe it. Today I went to the National Parent Forum of Scotland event where parents could go along and ask questions of John Swinney in his capacity as Education Minister. I went along with Don Marshall. He's the Perth and Dundee chairman of the Scottish Family Party. We didn't have a particular plan. We just went along to see what topics came up. We maybe bring up our own if we got the opportunity. But as it happens, Don got the first chance to ask a question.
Thank you.
Hi, yeah, I'm Don Marshall. Earlier on, you were talking about how it's important that you ensure that education is appropriate for all children, which I think is a really good thing. And I just want to ask the question that how is the current sex education material from RSHP appropriate for any child, let alone all children? And I'm talking particularly about the lessons on pornography and normalising it, which personally I'm totally against. And the second part of the question is, as a parent, because I disagree with this, how could I get my voice heard? Because I don't know a parent who actually supports the teaching of that material. How can we get our voice heard to change it?
Finally, the question that Don raised about relationships, sexual health and parenthood education. We've gone through a very detailed, extensive process of trying to prepare age-appropriate material in this respect. Now, I accept that some parents will. Now, why have we done that? We've done that because young people are quite readily able now to have access to a range of material which they have to be able to understand, and we have to try to equip them to handle. Now, I quite appreciate that some parents will take the view that that is exclusively the responsibility of their parents. And I understand and I respect that view. But I also feel that in a curriculum that lays such heavy emphasis on literacy, numeracy and health and well-being, we equally have a duty, because there's enough parliamentary pressure on me to make sure that that is the case as well. Now, so that's why it's been provided. It's gone through extensive consultation and dialogue. It's involved many, many organisations, a whole range of different bodies to have been part of the sounding board of constructing this material. And I've viewed it myself and I've interacted with it, and I appreciate there are some parts of it that parents will find challenging. But the judgment I arrived at about it was based on the evidence that I saw that young people could quite readily have access to some of this material without the context and understanding to be able to deal with that. And I think it's important that young people are able to deal with that in that fashion. Now, if you have concerns about it at an individual level, there is always the room for you to, there is not the room, there is the opportunity for you to raise that with individual schools. And I think that's again down to the nature of good quality parental relationships, where we have to respect the fact that as citizens, we will take different views, we will have different approaches, and we should respect that and come to an accommodation that meets the requirements of everybody.
Okay, hear this idea a lot. Kids are going to access pornography whether we like it or not, so we need to equip them to cope with it. I wouldn't particularly disagree with that, but that's not what we're disagreeing with. We're disagreeing with the message given. The way to equip young people to assess pornography and to develop the right attitude to it is not to tell them that it's fine and to encourage them to explore various perverted forms of it. John Swinney says, some people think it's just the parents' responsibility to talk about these things. Again, some people might think that's a valid view, but that's not our main point. Our point is the message you're delivering to young people is harmful to all young people. It's the wrong message. Talks about organisations that are backed it. Almost all the organisations backing this will be sock puppet charities, government-funded organisations. They're just part of the Scottish blob. They all think the same, and they're all paid to think the same as well. So if parents find it challenging, well, they're basically overruled. Bad luck, parents. Now, if an individual parent's got a concern, John Swinney is saying, take it to the individual schools. In other words, as far as the national policy is concerned, push off. That's not changing. We've decided that already. But we can sort of diffuse the opposition to it by just individual conversations with local schools, but nothing's going to change at the national level, is what he's saying. He talks about accommodation, trying to find accommodation. What he means by that is we decide and we do what the LGBT campaigners and the sexual radicals want. That's absolutely fixed. Then we seek accommodation by maybe you could try and tweak it by speaking to your school about what the education your child receives. In any case, that doesn't strictly work, because I think in certainly in one council, I think in others as well, if a child's over the age of 12 and a parent withdraws them from sex education, the child can actually overrule the parent and go to it in any case. Anyway, so I got a question later on. I decided to stay on the same theme. Now, I'll show you what happened in a minute, but I'll just explain it so you can understand the video that you're watching. So John Swinney, in the previous question, he endorsed the RSHP, the New Sex Education Resources. So I thought what I would do, I would explain some of what's in them, some of the more unsavoury elements, and then invite him to endorse it again. So basically, we could just try and make it explicit exactly what it is he is endorsing. So I started asking my question, and I said, sorry, I'm happy to talk about these things, but this is what's in the materials, and we need to talk about what children are being taught. Now, the lady hosting the event from the National Parent Forum of Scotland, she started interrupting me, she started waving her arms in front of me, trying to shield John Swinney from having to hear what I had to say. She complained that the event was being live streamed, so it would be on YouTube. The things I was describing are on YouTube, and they're in the sex education resources to be shown in schools. The lady from the organisers who was handing the microphone to people when they were asking questions came towards me and reached across to take the microphone from me while I was still speaking. So I backed off. You might hear me say, no, no, no. Then the man in front of me turned around and tried to take the microphone from me while I was sitting down. You can see that in the little inset video. I then stood up to get out of his reach, and I carried on. But then he snatched the microphone from my hand. He gave it to the lady of the organisers who was dealing with the microphone, and she kept the microphone in the far corner of the room. And the intention at that point was to shut me up and to move on. But I was not going to have it. By this stage, there are a few people in the room as well trying to shout me down. But I basically stood my ground, stood there, talked over them until the microphone came back, and then finished my question. You'll hear some people saying that my question was too long, get to the question. If you look at the rest of the event, there are lots of very, very long questions. My question was not unusually long at all. You also notice in the recording the sound switches a little bit, because some of it's recorded with the microphone. When the microphone was snatched off me, then I recorded that bit on my phone. I had my phone recording, so you might notice the slightly different sound quality through it. But just watch this.
Well, thank you very much. Just before I ask my question, I'd just say to Mr. Swinney, I think you've been put on the spot with a few individual cases today, which I think is a very difficult position for you, and I think you've handled that very sensitively. Anyway, moving on to my question, is following on from the previous question about the sex education resources, and I think your answer didn't actually face up to the content of the RSHP resources. I mean, just to go through a few of the things very, very quickly. I mean, right at the beginning of primary school, teaching that sex is assigned at birth and gender is a subjective factor. I think that's a very dangerous and confusing message for young people, and yet that's what's delivered to all children in Scottish schools. The sex education materials, I'm sorry to have to talk about these things, but this is what is being taught in schools. Masturbation is positively promoted in schools. In high schools, licking the anus is...
Remember that we are going live out here. This is
okay, if this... This is what's being taught in schools. If this is not suitable to talk about with a group of adults, how can it possibly be suitable to talk about in schools? Yes, on the internet, yeah, that's fine. Right, so to continue, I'm not going to be stopped. So that's presented as a perfectly valid sexual practice. Anal sex is illustrated by a video of a banana being dipped into Nutella and then withdrawn. Pornography, pornography. No, I'm going to say here, this is what's being taught in schools. Pornography is not just taught about, it is positively promoted in these materials. It is positively promoted as something beneficial and helpful. Different genres of pornography are also recommended to pupils. Such as, again, my question very soon.
Please.
I'm just referring to the resources. Mr. Swinney says he's watched them. I'm just pointing out what's in them. For example, it's recommended that pupils explore, for example, facial pornography, which involves ejaculation onto the face, which I think is disgusting. It talks about... Okay, what I'm talking about is what's being taught in schools. And if I'm about to get to a question, if I haven't been silent, I'm trying to speak up on behalf of innocents and youth in our schools that's been corrupted by these materials. I will not be silenced.
What's the question?
And my question is...
I'm not asking you to be silenced, but please.
Well, where's the microphone then?
If you'll ask your question.
I'll ask my question.
Nobody's going to the microphone up yet, but please.
Okay, this situation here. Okay, this situation. I am outlining the question. Please. I am outlining the contents of the Scottish Government Sex Education Resources. That's what I have done. I will now ask my question. My question to Mr. Swinney. These materials are not educational, they're corrupting of children. And my question is, having heard some of the detail of the content, I now invite you to re-endorse them, reaffirm your endorsement of them as you did earlier on.
Lastly, gentlemen's comments about relationships, sexual health and parenthood. Now, I accept that in this material there is there's some very sensitive territory covered. And that's why I answered the gentleman's question in the fashion that I did, that I appreciate there will be a range of views about whether this is appropriate material to be undertaken. A lot of care has been taken and a lot of dialogue and consultation to ensure that the contents of the material are truly age appropriate. And that has involved extensive dialogue with a number of organisations whose confidence I have wanted to make sure was in place around these materials. And one of the most significant points that has driven this debate has been, what do we need responsibly to ensure young people are equipped to handle from the world that is swirling around about them? It's promoting nothing.
See that? John Swinney says they're promoting nothing. Now, usually he has a very measured tone, but there's a bit of a steeliness in his voice there. They promote nothing. Now, the two things I charged the materials with promoting were masturbation and pornography. Let's look at charge number one. They promote masturbation. Here is part of a video from a lesson plan from the RSHP resources.
At the end of the day, masturbation is a safe and healthy activity, so put on some music, light those candles, and have yourself a good night.
Now, John Swinney claims he's watched this, and he says it's not promoting masturbation. Mr. Swinney is wrong. Either he's watched it and he can't remember it, or he's watched it and he's not capable of interpreting its meaning, or he's deliberately obscuring the nature of the material. Anyway, on to my claim number two, that it promotes pornography.
Hey you, my name is Thomas Tom Scott Ridgell, and pornography is as fun to watch as it is hard to forget. So much flesh. The whole purpose of pornography is to arouse us, to get us sexually excited, and that's great because using your actual imagination is hard work. Porn is great to watch while we're getting intimate with ourselves because it doesn't just turn us on, it also distracts us from how stupid we look while we're doing it.
We got case closed, same argument applies. A couple of the other things I cited is the evidence here again from videos and the lesson plans.
If you want to see more than straight white people getting it on, you might have to be a little more specific. There are plenty of types of porn, including but not limited to softcore, hardcore, lesbian, thespian, interracial, facial,
and only 40% of women have tried anal.
It is equipping young people with a knowledge and an understanding of what they can make their judgments about as responsible citizens in our society. Now, it is a changed world. It's a very changed world. It does not. It does not. It promotes nothing. It promotes nothing. It simply deals with the world as it is and makes sure that young people are equipped to handle that. Now, as I said to the gentleman here, I understand there will be parental opinion that will not like this, and that should be the source of dialogue with schools to resolve that issue. And you asked me to express my commendation for the materials. I repeat my commendation for the materials here. I've explained that in public communication from the government's behalf. I've also accepted the fact that there will be divided opinions about this. But I don't think we can allow our young people to be able, without context, to see things and experience things in our society that we have not properly equipped them for.
So again, John Swinney says about pupils being properly equipped. The end is not controversial. Everyone wants to be properly equipped. The means is the controversy. This education does not properly equip them.
I also have to be mindful of where is parliamentary opinion on all these questions. I'm a servant of Parliament, and I take my responsibility to Parliament deeply seriously. And I'm not trying to say what I'm about to say. I'm not trying in any way to suggest Parliament has forced this upon me, because it has not done so. But parliamentary opinion was very concerned that the previous materials that we had available did not properly equip young people for the world today, and also, crucially, that there was not sufficient understanding of the concept of consent, which is absolutely fundamental to every aspect of life, about how we treat each other as fellow human beings, how we interact. And Parliament was saying to me forcefully, this is weak. And we've addressed that through a careful process. It's taken us a long time, a lot of dialogue. I've wanted to be assured that organisations that would be sensitive about this were as comfortable as they could be about it. But I accept that some people will not be supportive of that material, and all I can say is I respect that diversity of opinion, but I feel I've got a duty to do the right thing on this issue.
Now, I'm intrigued by that. How exactly has Parliament expressed its view? Is John Swinney just trying to pass the buck a little bit here? How was the view of Parliament expressed? As far as I'm aware, there hasn't been a debate on this issue. Now, he's claiming to respect diversity of opinion, but then he says he has to do the right thing as opposed to the wrong thing, which I assume would be doing it the way I, for example, think sex education should be conducted. It seems that respect and ignore have pretty similar meanings in John Swinney's dictionary. Now, you'll hear there a bit of applause, and some of the people who were absolutely outraged when I was bringing up these things were then clapping that John Swinney was saying they were going to be presented to pupils in school. Now, during this, as is so often the case in these sort of events in Scotland, you feel like you're completely on your own when you're speaking out. After the event, 3 people came to me and said, "Oh, quite agree with you. I'm really glad you brought that up." A few people said the same to Don as well. But at these events, you stand up and speak for decency, common sense, probably the majority view of people in Scotland, and you feel like a pariah because people turn on you with quite unpleasant, overt hostility. They're ready to shout you down. And those people are probably a minority. The silent majority, understandably possibly, is often afraid to speak. Now, the National Parent Forum of Scotland is a government-funded organisation that allegedly exists to give a voice to parents into the government on matters relating to children. Obviously, education would be an important part of that. But it doesn't function as that. It actually functions as the voice of the government to parents. Just go and have a look at their Twitter feed. You'll see it just continually promotes government policy. It's part of the blob, the vast world of organisations dominated by so-called progressive groupthink. This is their tweet announcing these extremely controversial sex education materials. I mean, it could have been a press release from John Swinney, but welcome to Scotland. What I'd like you to do at this point is just imagine in the Scottish Parliament, and imagine First Minister's question time with the Scottish Family Party in there, asking a question every now and again. Okay, and we can make that happen. And the best first step in bringing that about is to join the Scottish Family Party right now. It costs about the amount of a cup of coffee a month. There's a link with this video. Thanks for watching.